It has been a crazy, crazy weekend in the PlayStation landscape. Or should I say the PC landscape, because now Sony does actively publish and ship games on PC, and one of their biggest titles right now, Helldivers 2, was at the forefront of a major controversy, which I'm sure a lot of you probably know what transpired. A lot of it did go down within a 50-something hour period to where it all came to what appears to be a resolution point, so there is good news at the end of this tunnel, but considering how this went down, we have to talk about this. It's a really crazy thing, and so yeah, if you did not hear about this, or at the very least want a brief recap on the entire thing, here's what happened. So on Thursday around 8 p.m. EDT, so right before I usually film LTPS, and I didn't think this was going to be what it turned into, but basically the game's Steam page had this new announcement on there where they mentioned the PSN account linking requirement was disabled at launch initially because there was, well, we remember how the launch went down for this game, a lot of massive technical difficulties, so they did turn off the requirement back then, but now they're going to re-enable it. So new accounts starting on May 6th would need to link a PSN ID, and existing players would have a little bit more time where they would have to link an account by, well, they would log in to see a notice on May 30th, and then the requirement would be in effect on June 4th. The post claimed that they needed to do this for security and safety reasons. It's one of their main ways to protect players from griefing and abuse, so it allows more leverage on player banning, but also player appeals as well. So that's where the backlash starts, because people were able to play this game for 2 months without linking a PSN account, but the PSN requirement was indeed there on the Steam page the entire time, right? So for a lot of folks, it was a sort of immediate, I guess, blindsided thing. Why do we have to start linking accounts? But it is something where the requirement was always on the Steam page. You can Wayback Machine it to see. There's also trailers of Helldivers 2 initially where there's some text on the bottom. So we always knew the PSN account linking requirement was there. It was simply disabled the entire time. I know some people were citing the PlayStation official site FAQ, where it did say PSN accounts aren't required for PS Studio games on PC, although that's not really the receipt people think it is. That's more of a site where it's a policy change. I mean, they can obviously change those things whenever they choose to do so, but for this particular game, it was always out there. So the game starts getting review bombed on Steam, more than 60,000 negative reviews in just a day, which, most big publishers operating online games, they do require some kind of login, so this isn't unusual, but one of the bigger arguments surrounding this is that PSN is not officially available in some countries, and by some, I mean over 170 countries, and it would be breaking terms of service to make an account for a location where you don't reside, so technically the game would be unplayable to a lot of people 2 months on. So now we're at a point where the Arrowhead CEO was pretty open about this. They're fairly active on Twitter, so they were saying that the review scores hurt, and they'll have to try and regain player trust by making great game experiences, and also responding to fans and taking part responsibility in how they chose to remove the PSN requirement on day one, and not making it more known that the PSN linking would eventually come back and be required. He did say this was very much from Sony. They're the publisher. They signed with them 8 years ago, and this was implemented a couple of months before release. They knew 6 months prior to the game launching that this was something they would have to, eventually do, but the team at Arrowhead wanted it to be optional, and they expected the backlash. So someone asked him if PSN is not in my country, what do I do? And he responds with, I don't know, because Arrowhead in this case wouldn't know. The publisher handles the distribution of the game, the storefronts, how they sell it, where they sell it, so that's on them. Arrowhead simply creates the game, but there's definitely a tone of defeat in that answer, knowing that his hands are tied right now as they try to talk it out with PlayStation and figure out what's going to happen. In the meantime, people are now getting refunds for the game on Steam, even if their play time is well over 2 hours, because the PSN requirement and country availability would make the game unavailable to them. Now the negative reviews are piling up to over 100,000, and then on May 4th, the game gets restricted to buy on Steam from those 177 countries where PSN isn't available, which amplified the backlash even more, seeing as it looked like Sony's answer was to push forward with the requirement, and this was their way of getting around their own roadblock. But in a very unusual fashion, 12 a.m. on a Monday, basically Sunday night, the PlayStation Twitter account sent out this tweet saying that they're still learning what is best for PC players and confirming the linking requirements will not go forward. They thank everyone for the support and say we'll keep you updated on future plans. And that's where we are right now. So I gotta be honest, folks, I did not expect this outcome at all. This was something where I was on the Spawncast on Saturday, and I think the entire cast were in agreement here, but me and MVG were saying point blank, like, there's no way Sony's walking back on this. I didn't think that was at all even possible, considering, Sony's a big company. This game's very popular. People want to play it. Also, a lot of third-party publishers do this already for online and some single-player games as well. So it's like, how are they not going to sort of just get over this? But, this did really blow up into a much bigger thing by Sunday night. Because, initially, when I saw the news on Thursday, like right before LTPS, and it just didn't seem like a massive story, so that's why I didn't mention it at the time. But I thought, okay, that's pretty standard affair. Then Saturday night comes, and the backlash kind of blows up into a pretty big thing. But it's like, it's still probably going to go through. I actually feel a little bad that I was a little dismissive with the whole, people will just make PSN accounts in countries that are unsupported and they'll lie about it, which, in fairness, people do that all the time. I know I do it. I know probably a lot of you do it, not just PSN, but it's a matter of like anything online. You make accounts, you lie if you want to access or get to a kind of service, right? You just kind of do that sort of thing. But it's still a problem that does need to be addressed. That, and there is still the issue where some countries, they do require some sort of validation by either an ID or like a local phone number. So that's also still a problem as well. So again, that was a complete oversight on my part. But I did not realize, like, I always knew PSN was not available everywhere, but 170 something countries, that I did not know. That's an insane amount on paper. Technically for Sony, they're not a dumb company. They operate primarily where the vast majority of players are. So 170 sounds like a lot, but they're still serving like most people that they are going to serve to be a very highly profitable business, not to discount the other 170 countries, but you know what I mean. But when you think about it, it's still something where this was a massive oversight. PSN, the reason why they're not officially supported in all these countries is because they just don't have a marketplace footprint officially by selling consoles and games and things like that. So they don't technically have to operate officially there. But when you start shipping on PC, a very global storefront, then you have to start thinking about this sort of thing. So this does seem like a very silly, if not bizarre, oversight when they're going to require the PSN account, and people genuinely, if they don't want to break terms of service, then they can't make an account. You even have the Arrowhead CEO just not having an answer. Like, oh, I didn't even realize. I don't know what to tell you. Like, it just seems like a very silly circumstance. But really, it's an optics thing. This entire thing is all about optics. So I don't want to generalize here, but this for this channel, it's primarily a console audience. So I know for a lot of folks, the immediate reaction might just be that, oh, PC players are overreacting, which there's certainly a little bit of that at play, but it is an optics thing where there's a lot of things working against Sony here. Sony, typically doesn't have a great reputation. They're just a big company, a big publisher, now finally shipping games on PC, but they have a history with data breaches. Everyone knows that people just, that Sony wants their data. They want to just bolster PSN monthly active users, and they did it 2 months after, and even though they did outline it beforehand, it was not something where every time you logged into Helldivers 2 on PC, there was some sort of notice telling you about that. There's also the matter of the PSN requirement, not really offering anything on paper, right? So while they do cite that it's for moderation and security, which it seems like there actually is a level of that at play, like that does sort of streamline things. That's my understanding of it. But the counter argument for other games, at least, is that other titles will offer cross-save, cross-progression, cross-buy initiatives, right? Every publisher does this differently, but, Sony, they weren't really offering anything here. In fact, you have to wonder that would maybe come at some point down the road, because that's what we can say, right? Optically, this was very bad, but they still say we'll keep you updated down the road. Like, how are they not going to eventually want to get these PSN accounts, right? This is a highly successful game. They're going to be shipping other PC titles. So I can't see a circumstance where they're not going to at some point still want this, but maybe now Arrowhead just has that leverage to sort of have Sony back off, because I feel bad for Arrowhead too about this whole thing. Just as a little side note here, it really does suck that they were probably put in a very tough position from their big publisher that funded this game for 8-something years, right? Sony is still in large part why this game came to be, so it's, you know, to have to butt heads and maybe sour those relationships because Arrowhead has spent 8 years slaving over this game and it's highly successful, and now they have to deal with this. It's just, I feel so bad for Arrowhead. But the point is, you gotta figure they're probably going to try and at least incentivize people to make PSN accounts by maybe eventually offering cross progression, the PlayStation overlay that we're seeing for the Tsushima PC port as well, maybe in-game content, some kind of in-game bonus item or whatever, which now Arrowhead's going to be on the hook to try and convert people to make PSN accounts, because that is still an angle where, you know, people were, if you were in a country that does support PSN, then in theory that is something where like you can easily just knock that out in 2 minutes and it's not a huge deal in the grand scheme of things. But not to circle back to the optics thing, it's a matter of like, they really kind of, the core issue is without a doubt the matter that, you know, people weren't being told this immediately day one over and over and over again, so they turned it off day one. The game works just fine for 2 months. Well, it works just fine for, let's say, a month and a half. The first, 2 weeks were pretty rough. But, the game operates just fine, and then all of a sudden they're asking for the account. That's where it looks bad. If, the game came out, it worked just fine, PSN requirement was there immediately, this wouldn't have been a problem. Also, if Helldivers 2 was, a fraction of how successful it is right now, let's say it had like 1/10 of the player base, then this probably wouldn't have happened either. It's a testament to how successful the game is, because that many people were just upset with, even borderline annoyed with the idea of having to make an account for a publisher that they, conceivably don't care about, or they're just fed up with having to make all these different accounts, because of course it's annoying, right? Like, nobody really wants to do it if they don't have to. So even though it's like get over, it's an easy thing to do kind of thing, it's still annoying. Nobody likes doing it, so it's still a valid complaint. So it's just that many people were able to sort of come together, and Arrowhead again using that leverage to at least have the account linking be optional for the time being. But it does seem like at some point it's going to come up. The other thing too is we have Tsushima launching on the 16th of this month, and while PSN is not required for the single player, you will need it for Legends. I would imagine that's still going to be a problem for the countries that are not supported. So are they going to be able to change terms of service by then, or at the very least, not require PSN for anybody that's in those countries? Because I would imagine the reason why they restricted the buying process for this game was more of a band-aid fix, because we have to remember today would have been the day that new accounts would have to link a PSN ID. I don't think you can just sort of overnight change terms of service that quickly, or just draft up all that kind of stuff over the weekend to prepare for this change. So it would seem like the whole restricting access on Steam was more of a maybe immediate band-aid fix to, just sort of get a grasp on the situation before figuring out what the best path forward is, which in the here and now is making it optional. So, it's just, it was a whole thing. This really was big. Again, I don't want to generalize, but I think for many, maybe on this channel, it would be, this was an overblown kind of thing. But this is kind of what I was getting at for a while on LTPS, which is Sony now investing in the PC space and shipping on PC. This is a golden opportunity for them as a publisher to get in bed with that audience and make a great first impression, because everybody else does a pretty bad job, right? I mean, this is something where Sony has a chance to ship high quality, solid PC ports, because everybody else seems to do a very bad job at this. Be mindful of pricing where it makes sense. Embrace all these features from AMD and NVIDIA. Support ultra-wide natively. Go for Steam Deck verification. There are so many things you can do to, sort of show the PC audience that we mean business, and we're going to do these games right, and we're going to do right by you. But they've now put a massive stain on their first successful live service game on PC. And that's a problem, even though they were able to somewhat swiftly respond to this. I mean, Sony responding to this on a Sunday night effectively means that, this was a busy weekend for them that they don't typically have to deal with. So trying to get an answer out there, I thought they probably were going to wait until Monday morning for a press release, which I guess that is technically Monday morning, but you know what I mean. So they were able to address it in a way that I was very shocked by. I didn't think they were actually going to make it optional, so that's good. But it is a problem. It's already over. This happened. People are going to remember this for a very long time, probably forever. Although I'll always argue that you can put this in the rearview mirror. We have Cyberpunk as an example. There's No Man's Sky. I mean, there's always going to be that history, but if you make great content, as the Arrowhead CEO implies, if they just make excellent experiences, people are going to want to play them. Yeah, they'll make a PSN account if they have to, if your game really is that fun and people want to stay engaged with that content. So at the very minimum, this is something where they can get over it, but the damage has been done. Now it's up to Sony and their future PC lineup to see if they can sort of get over that. And I'll be curious to see how they'll handle it moving forward, especially with this game, if the PSN linking requirement does eventually come back around again. Anyway, I know this is a topic that is going to encourage a lot of conversation, so by all means go for it, and I'll see you all in my next video. You take it easy.